Well, I'm Jackie Adams. I'm Director of Education and Engagement here at the Columbia Museum of Art. And this is you guys are one of my favorite audiences because you're the students, you're the teachers, and you're the support system for all these young creative minds that are coming up in the world today. So I am so excited to host this program today, and I'm excited to do it with my partner, Mr. Marty Fort.
Hello, everybody.
Marty is the founder and the owner of the Columbia Arts Academy, which we have some of those students here with us today, and I'm so pleased that you could take the time out of your busy schedules as well to be with us. So we're here, we're gonna have a nice conversation with Kirk, and how many of you know who Metallica is? Oh good. Sometimes we ask, do any of you know who Botticelli is? And I get like 2 hands. So you know that our special guest today is a legend in himself. He is the lead guitarist of Metallica, and he's been here with us this week because, like a lot of us creative folks, we have our one focus area that we do very passionately, right? But if you're a creative person, you've got lots of other creative interests. And so Kirk is that kind of creative person as well. His day job is Metallica, being a lead guitarist, but he's got another passion, which is collecting sci-fi and horror art. So much to the degree that we were able to create a really beautiful exhibition out of it, and we have it here on display. So today's program is really in celebration of that, but also in celebration of Kirk's own music career and his creativity in that realm as well. So we're really thrilled. He's had a really busy week this week, I must admit. No wonder he's a rock star. The guy is working super freaking hard. He's very, very busy this week, so I know you would say the same too, Marty. I'm incredibly in admiration, but also extremely appreciative that he's being generous enough to take time with us today for about an hour. So without further ado, let's do this. All right, ladies and gentlemen, students, teachers, and guardians, I'd like to welcome Mr. Kirk Hammett. Your microphone right here.
There's my mic.
Have a seat.
I was looking for my mic. How is everyone today? Excellent. It's a beautiful day. All right.
So I thought we might get started, Kirk, and just do some shout outs to the students and just recognize who all's here real quick, if that's all right.
Yeah.
All right, so we have students here from 3 different music institutions. We have the Columbia Arts Academy, which is a private teaching and lesson institution. Marty owns it. He's the founder. Columbia Arts Academy kids, raise your hands. All right. We have a nice showing of students from there. And then we also have the Dreher High School Blue Devils. We're the Dreher High School students.
All right.
Dreher High School has a really great guitar program, levels 1 through 4.
All right, that's killer.
Yeah, and their mascot is the Blue Devils.
Literally. I like it.
Very apropos.
What's a Blue Devil do, though?
Shreds guitar.
Oh, of course. Pardon my ignorance.
You whip out some evil on those courts. And then we also have a really great group near and dear to Columbia, Girls Rock Columbia.
Yeah! That's great. Girls do rock.
That's right.
By the way.
So so I wanted to recognize those students that are here, and teachers. Where are the teachers at? All right, we know you guys got the hardest job in the group, so awesome. And then parents, you're the ones who get driven crazy every day. I'm a guitar mom, I know. Some days I can't take it anymore, but you guys are the ones that have to show the endless support and love of your students. So, and sometimes money, right? Because those guitar passions kind of lead from 1 guitar to 2 guitars to 3 guitars. I'm like, no more guitars.
Yeah, but it's way cooler than the trumpet.
Yeah.
Or a drum kit. Sorry. Sorry, drummers.
So I thought we would just start off the conversation to make an immediate connection with where you guys are right now, students, in your formative years, with Kirk's formative years. And Kirk, I thought you could tell us a little bit. I was reading online last night. You got your first guitar when you were a teenager.
Yeah, I traded my first guitar for a Kiss album I had and $10. And the guitar that I got wasn't very good. It was probably if the scale was alphabetical, it was about a Y or a Z. But at 6 strings, and it kind of stayed in tune, and it made a noise, and that was enough for me.
And you're talking a foreign language, because that's why I have Marty here.
Okay.
So he's helping me decipher some of the musical,
Okay.
technical language, which
Okay.
is, which is good for me.
All right. Lingo, jargon, whatever.
And one of the things, so I was at the, the lecture Wednesday, which was awesome. And one of the things I was curious about, you guys, in my opinion, some of you are a bit of a disadvantage because we came up with the days with albums. How many of you, show of hands, know what an album is? An album cover, right? Like your mom and dad stuff. So I was really inspired by, going to the record store, just pouring through the bins and like an Iron Maiden album blowing my mind. Or even later on, even like Manowar had like pretty intense artwork, you know what I mean? But all that stuff to me was just it's just no matter whether the metal was amazing metal or bad metal or whatever the metal was, it was still metal. It was just kind of blew my mind. So I'm curious, like when you were coming up, what album covers or artists really spoke out to you, and did that kind of tie into the love for horror? Because Eddie has some pretty scary, like obviously the original Phantom of the Opera, Iron Maiden poster, for example.
Well, I've always kind of been pulled into any sort of imagery that has anything to do or suggested anything that had to do with horror, sci-fi, or whatnot. And when I would go shopping in record stores, if something was horror themed, I was like radar. I went right to it. And I guess also because I was such a movie fanatic when I was younger, and still am now, anything that looked remotely interesting or that reminded me of a movie that I was interested in drawing my attention as well. And like you said, the first Iron Maiden album, I hadn't even, I wasn't the one who initially saw it. It was my friend who came up to me and said, "Man, I just saw this album cover, and it had this really sick looking monster on the cover, and its eyes were just intense." I don't know if you guys know what the first Iron Maiden album looks like. I wish we had like a slideshow I can show you, but it's their mascot Eddie, and it's just a front shot. And I said to my friend, "Okay, show it to me." And we went to the metal section, and he said, "It's gone." I go, "What?" And we looked everywhere, and it was gone. Someone snuck up and bought it from when we were like in a different aisle or something. And it wasn't for like about, I'd say a week and a half later, I was at a friend's house, and I heard this really, really great heavy metal. And I ran over to the record player and I said, "What's this?" And he said, "Iron Maiden." And he showed me the album, and it kind of clicked. I thought to myself, that's probably the album my other friend and I were looking for. And that's how that all kind of tied in. But what I loved about Iron Maiden's second album was all these different references to horror movies, and the first album too. The first album has song titles like Phantom of the Opera, Rat Child. The second album is Murders in the Rue Morgue, and so for me, that's what I really miss nowadays. A lot of times when music is released, it's just released as the music, and you don't really get the initial package that was put together. A lot of people of my generation were used to getting a complete package where you would see artwork, images, pictures of the band, printed matter, whether it was about the recording or the songs, about the band itself, or just some spaced out kind of concept. That's all kind of just like passe now, and when an album comes out, you read about it on iTunes, you sign in with your account, you download it, and you get a little picture of what the album cover might be, or the CD cover. And I don't know about other people out there, but I never really make it past the music once it's downloaded. I have to go to the store and buy the CD to get all the other information and all the images and pictures and whatnot that's a part of the whole package.
And you just brought up something that's really interesting that I've even kind of taken for granted, which is the amount of artwork that used to be included in the actual vinyl LPs. So Kiss just came through town, and I'm a huge Kiss fan, and so I have the original Gene Simmons solo album, but I have the one with the actual, it's almost kind of Japanese-looking fold-out, to it, the poster, and it's just awesome, and I just saw a lot of synergy between what you were talking about with your love for the poster artwork that you have in your collection.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times bands would put out albums, and there would be a gatefold sleeve, which meant it'd open up, and it would be like, two album covers, a length of an image, usually of the band or something that was interesting. And a lot of times there would be posters that came with the initial pressing of the album. I mean, I remember having a Kiss poster that came with the album, Pink Floyd poster came with that album, a Queen poster that came with the album. I mean, those days are kind of gone now.
And when you think about the spirit of collecting, I think students today, they look to their parents to get those objects now because it defines so much of their youth and growing up. And it's created this great intergenerational bond with your child now that you may not have otherwise, because you can pull these objects out and they come with stories and experiences, and it's a lot like the collection that's in the exhibition. There's stories, there are memories, there are all these things wrapped up in that.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to say, boil back in the olden days. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. Albums like movie posters, they're mementos of just a different time when things were done differently. And when I look back, I think, well, progress is progress, but did things really get better for the consumer? And I'm always asking that question.
Well, what's been cool to see with the music is, I mean, like I said, so you guys, a big thing here, Kirk, is every year the fair comes. So the South Carolina State Fair is a big thing. You guys, show of hands, everybody's been to the fair, right? So the prizes back then, when I was your age, like they were metal posters. Like you won the Phantom of the Opera poster. You won. Yeah, awesome. Completely.
Or did you have the mirrors?
Huh?
Did you have the mirrors? Band logos on mirrors?
Oh, well, yeah. You slapped these stickers everywhere. I was a doodler. Like, so I sit in notebooks in class.
Okay.
Shouldn't be telling you this, you should be paying attention in class. But I'm trying to write Metallica logos, Rat logos, Kiss logos, whatever I can, that whole thing. But what I was gonna say is, so Maiden just played Charlotte recently, and Bruce, to the whole audience, was like making the joke that, they're more popular now than they were in the heyday because the attendance for them has grown, and it's just grown and grown. So even though the music's been digitized, and of course you guys, you're doing everything you do, it's awesome. You want to talk about next point we had?
Yeah.
Joe Satriani.
Yeah.
Joe Satriani.
Talking about those formative years still and some of the influences. Yeah, I heard some applause here, so somebody knows about Joe Satriani.
So you took private lessons with Joe Satriani.
Yeah.
Obvious question. I mean, what, if your starting point, what was that like? I can't imagine.
Well, I mean, there was a little bit of a backstory to that. When I was in Exodus, there's a whole slew of guitar players who would kind of hang out at all the local clubs, and we would check out each other's bands, check out other bands. We were always aware of like how everyone was playing, because we were all kind of like in our musically developmental stages. And I know at that point I was a sponge. I was just soaking everything in. And I remember this one guitar player showed up in this newly formed band, and he was great. And all my other friends and I were talking about him. And then Paul Bailoff, the singer of Exodus, said, "Yeah, I heard he was taking guitar lessons from this guy named Joe Satriani at Rose Music in Berkeley." And I thought, Rose Music. And so the next day I went down to that music store, and I walked in, and from the very back of the room I could hear someone giving lessons, and this crazy guitar playing coming out of that room. And so I just sat there, and the person who was getting lessons walked out. I ran back there and I said, "Hey, I'd love to get some lessons from you. And he said, okay, show up on Tuesday, you know, and with some graph paper. And I remember riding my bike about 12 miles because it was the only way I could get around back then, knowing that once I got there, because there's a music store, I can just grab a guitar off the rack and go in the back. So I did that, and that's how that whole teacher-student relationship started with him and I. And he sat me down and laid out the rules to me about, you know, how what he expects from his students. And he was harsh, and he was honest, and he also was a bit of a slave driver, but I liked his attitude, and I couldn't believe his guitar playing. His guitar playing was a lot like you would expect it to be. I mean, all the elements of his style were there already. All these crazy sounds, exotic scales, you know, a different approach, rhythmic, polyrhythmic, you know, counterpoints. I mean, everything. He was everything that I thought a guitar teacher should be, plus more, because he had so much personality in his playing. And so I was hooked from like the first lesson, and I learned so much about musical theory and how to practice and how to be discerning and playing which notes count. And most importantly, he said to me right off the bat, it doesn't matter how fast you play. It's your taste, your sense of rhythm, and your heart and soul. And he said, you know, there are players who play 3 notes and say it with 3 notes that another guy might need 300 notes to listen to. The one thing is, you can listen to the guy with 3 notes a lot longer than you can listen to the guy with 300 notes. And I thought, good point. Yeah. Also, the second lesson, I brought him this demo tape from this band from Sweden called Rising Force. And the guitar player on that tape was a 18-year-old Swedish guy named Yngwie Malmsteen. And I played it for Joe, and he's like, And I heard a voice from the other room screaming, that tape is speeded up. And Joe's like, nope, that guy's picking every note, and it's in real time, and it's not sped up, or else the pitch would be affected. And we kind of dissected Yngwie's style, but then Yngwie started recording and making all these albums, and I didn't want to turn out like some clone of someone else, and so I purposely just kind of stopped looking into the aspects of his style.
Well, yeah, because that's interesting, because I mean, like, you know, everything you're talking about is very, as you guys know, very technical guitar stuff. I hope this comes out right, because we're all very passionate about the music we love. I would say, to me, just in my opinion, you've always got an opinion, but Tony Iommi, you know, completely different side of the spectrum for me. A lot of pentatonics, blues, but I agree with what Ozzy says in interviews, that he is the master riff writer in so many ways. So talk to us about, because one of the things I think that's so cool about you, Kirk, is you just seem to have an interest in a lot of different types of guitar playing. And so many people, like Dave from Monster Magnet, they tour with you guys. I'm a huge Monster Magnet fan. And Dave loves to go to Europe, because in Europe, what Dave says about Europeans, guys, is that Europeans listen to all music. You can talk to a European about jazz, metal, whatever, but Americans, we tend to, and I agree with Dave's assessment, kind of get in like this box, or only this is cool. So how did the Sabbath and the other stuff come to you?
Well, it's interesting, because not that long ago I realized that I wasn't really exposed to hard rock until I was about 12 years old. I mean, I grew up in San Francisco, and I spent a lot of time listening to just the music that was around me, and that was like a lot of jazz, a lot of blues, a lot of Latin music, you know, Broadway music. My brother's record collection, which had just like a lot of like pop, like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. I remember staring at at Black Sabbath's second album, Paranoid, and just wondering about the cover, going, why is this guy in weird tights? But I never really like listened to it. And you know, AM radio, and that AM radio at that time was just amazing. It had all that R&B and soul and funk. And so that stuff, I mean, was like already deep inside of me when I started to, I switched from a Catholic school to a junior high school, which was a weird cultural thing for me anyway. All the kids around me were talking about bands like Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin and Jethro Tull, and I thought to myself, wow, those guys have really weird names. And asking, those guys are in bands, you know? I thought Led Zeppelin was a person. I got schooled on that. But then, you know, because of my horror movie aesthetic, someone showed me a Kiss album, and I thought, that's what I want to listen to. Because I saw Gene Simmons, and you know, something clicked in my mind. I made some sort of like horror connection. So I went out and got Kiss Alive 2, or Kiss Alive, the first album, and listened to it, and I was hooked. I mean, I discovered hard rock, and I loved it. And I went on to like, you know, hear everything else in the 70s, and eventually start playing guitar. Because I rediscovered Jimi Hendrix. I say rediscovered because I remember my brother would play it all the time when I was really young. And when I heard it, you know, X amount of years later, it sounded familiar to me. And I thought, oh, this is the music that my brother would listen to when I was younger. The only difference was, you know, I was older enough to comprehend it and make sense out of it a lot more than I could when I was 5 or 6 years old. And then I saw a documentary on Jimi Hendrix, and that inspired me to pick up a guitar.
You know, and I want to fact check something really quick though. Last night I read that you went on to study film.
Yeah, I studied film at San Francisco State for a semester.
I think that's so interesting.
Yeah, I love film, and one of these days I want to make a horror movie.
Okay.
It's just I'm really busy, and I've been involved in 2 other movies, and one big takeaway that I learned from those 2 movies is when you make a movie, it's always good if someone else is paying for it.
Yeah, I found that interesting because you know, that's coming a little bit later in the trajectory.
Yeah.
And you know, we all know you as the musician that you are and the film collector that you are, but you know, you actually delved into that, you know, that area as an academic pursuit.
Yeah, I mean, I seriously want to make a film one of these days, and I just, seriously, the only thing that's holding me back is just I have not gotten around to it yet, but I intend on it. I'm making a film and doing the music myself as well.
And I think a lot of people tend to look at creatives as being sort of maybe, especially when you get to the stage in life that you are, as sort of a single sort of picture there. But you know, you come to realize that there's more to your development than you realize, and there's more creative territory to explore as well.
And well, absolutely. I mean, it's amazing because I still feel like my creative spirit still wants to roam around and try different things and explore things and fail a couple times, but you know, keep on trying, because that's what it's all about. You know, it's just like the creative spirit is restless, and I am just, there's so much I still want to do. I'm not ready to just sit down and look back and go, wow, look at all the great things that I've done. That's boring. It's not being creative. So I mean, my hunger is as strong as ever now, really.
And you see that in a lot of great artist biography. They don't stop. They may move around, they may try other things, but they're constantly seeking another way to be creative and expressive. So I thought that was important to contextualize for you as well.
Yeah. I mean, and it was something that I really didn't expect. You know, I just kind of found myself in this headspace, and frankly, I'm kind of surprised that I still feel this this late in the game. But for me, I mean, it's not really that late in the game unless you just kind of like throw up your hands and go, okay, I'm done. But I'm never going to be done. Yeah. I am never going to be done, which is another thing a curse that some creative people have. When is something done? When you can just keep on adding to it and blah blah blah.
What I love that came out this morning, is not this afternoon, getting to be afternoon, in musician time.
Oh, yeah, right.
You're talking about being a sponge. I think that's so important for these young students to be open to being into a sponge. And those of you that don't know, so who knows who Robert Trujillo made a movie about? Who knows? Okay, how many of you guys play jazz? Okay, so Jaco Pastorius, take that name. He's a big Jaco fan.
Yes, Jaco Pastorius. Jaco Pastorius was an amazing bass player. He played with a lot of great jazz players, played with a lot of pop musicians as well. He was innovative, and he was one of Rob Trujillo's main influences, and so Rob paid tribute to him by making a documentary on Jaco, and it's called Jaco. I think it's available online. I suggest you guys check it out because this guy was an amazing musician, but he fell into just a lot of really hard, difficult situations and circumstances, and left us way too early. But just to kind of riff on that, I have a real love for jazz, and also I have a real love for progressive rock and jazz rock and jazz fusion, and Jaco kind of lived in that world, that region of jazz rock fusion. But then he played with Joni Mitchell, which was completely different.
So, one of the things that was really interesting for me to hear about Wednesday, or wasn't a total surprise, you talked about gravitating towards minor keys, minor scales, in that kind of time of heart. Even to this day, when I go to the guitar, I play for 25 years, and I've got, classical jazz experience very similar as far as just having a love for anything with 6 strings, right? But every time, Kirk, I still go to that just 1, 3, 4 of hitting that minor scale.
Yeah.
And what it was for me was for years of not only having a teacher, but I would shed to cassettes. I was talking to John, your drummer, the other day. I became very good friends with pencil erasers, because whenever you heard the cassette speed up, imminent danger was here, because what happened is they would eat the cassette.
Yeah.
So to pull it out, take the pencil, wind it back together,
Yeah.
and then I'd go back to work.
Yep.
Yep.
So I guess my question with you is, so you take it with Satriani, you're buying these Kiss albums, you're around all this stuff in the Bay Area, but then I would imagine any guitar player kind of settles on their love for certain things, whether it's going to be Sabbath or whoever it was. So how did you, at wherever you did practice, put those minor scales into use, and were you playing with records and playing the Sabbath records, or what was that like?
Well, I played a lot to records. I mean, for me, it was the only real way to learn anything, because I didn't know any other people in my neighborhood to even play guitar, except for my friend who started around the same time I did, and we kind of hung out and showed each other stuff for the first year that we were playing. And the way we would learn things, because we would compete, is we would just take stuff off, learn stuff off of albums, all our favorite albums. And I remember first, the key thing was you had to tune to the album, because it wasn't always, concert pitch 440. And then you would play the track and just try to grab whatever notes you could. And then when you got to the guitar solo, you try to learn it, and then you pick up the needle, put it back, play it again, pick up the needle, pull it back, play it again. And it was really tedious and really torturous for anyone who was around me, like my parents or my siblings or whatnot. But that's how I learned how to play. And later on, it was a cassette, hitting rewind, playing, hitting rewind, playing, until the tape machine literally would burn out, or the tape would magnetize or break or overspool or whatever.
Well, there was always that little fuzzy thing in the middle that would get displaced.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's how I taught myself in the beginning. And during the weekends at 11 o'clock at night or at midnight, there are these rock shows that would have bands playing live on the show. and I'd always check out what bands were going to be on TV and just watch the guitar players intently. And I spent a lot of time doing that, and that's how I kind of developed my style until I found other people to start playing with, and then things started to come together. And every time I picked up a guitar, I would always just play blues or minor stuff, or look for the most evilest progression I could find. And when I discovered tritones, the flatted fifth, I was in heaven, because then I thought I had the key to like real evil in music. And to this day, that flatted fifth, it's just like it's so important in a lot of the music that I play. But it's just, again, it ties into just my love of horror movies, and playing in minor keys kind of fit the same sort of a scenario in my head that horror movies did. And so it was very similar to me in feel. And so I love minor scales, harmonic minor, dominant minor, augmented, diminished, flat fifths, all that stuff. I use it a lot in my music.
Well, you're putting me and the teachers in the room in heaven, because we've all been a fan of your music you're playing, and what's so refreshing to hear is, this guy knows his theory. You know what I mean? This is like one of the most famous guitar players in the world, and he's got all this stuff down. So many of the students, we just see it. It's easy, they fall in love with one thing or one style, but you're a great example of musical diversity, and that's awesome. So thank you for that.
Yeah. I mean, what's really important is just to recognize musical formulas. I mean, every genre of music has a musical formula that you can go to and rely on to create that particular type of sound. And once you start recognizing the main musical formulas in like jazz or blues or bossa nova or country or whatever, and then recognize all the similar formulas that are in that genre, I mean, you can move around that music and learn it really, really quickly, and really absorb it very quickly. But the trick is recognizing the formula.
So I think we have some questions, because we're all
I want to be conscientious of time, and we asked you all to think about one question that you might like to ask Kirk, and we pre-selected some of those. All right, so let's see who the lucky winners are.
All right,
here we go.
My favorite color is...
All right, what gave you the motivation to get where you are now?
Stubbornness. I had as a child, I always kind of had this OCD, ADD thing going, and when I found something that I was really, really just fascinated with, my OCD would kick in. And when it came to music, I was obsessed with music, which led me to playing guitar, which led me to being obsessively compulsive about my guitar and doing things correctly and learning as much as I could. And really just like experimenting and exploring through my guitar, all the possibilities, all the different chord sequences and combinations, no combinations. I still have a real thirst to like figure out how certain things are done, certain sounds are made, certain chords are played, and when I figure that out, I get such an immense feeling of satisfaction. And I also, I see music as a series of building blocks. When I compose music, I mean, it's like, okay, I got the foundation, now I gotta put the walls up. But I'm looking for this one type of wall, and it's somewhere here, and I haven't found it yet, but I know it's in here. And what I'm basically doing is I'm trying to find the right pieces of music to go together, and I will sit there and agonize over it for minutes, hours, days, weeks until I find the right piece and then put it in. But I mean, what really spurs me on is solving the musical questions that are in my brain all the time. And once I do that, I get immense satisfaction. And usually when I solve that equation, I end up with a piece of music, or something to play, or something to collaborate on, and that's the end result. And I have that end result for, pretty much forever, for the rest of my life. And that's what spurs me on. I have so many ideas and so much surplus music just sitting around that at this point in time, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna dig into this stuff and just see what I can make of it. And I have so much atmospheric, moody, dark music that if someone came up to me and said, okay, I need a soundtrack for a horror film, I'm like, I got you. And literally in a week, I could just pick all these different pieces of music that I've written over the years and put it together and cob together a soundtrack just like that. Literally, I can do that.
Is that your dream project, your dream?
Well, one of the things that's on the list for sure, and once I start doing it, I intend to keep on doing it, for sure. But I just get immense satisfaction from feeding that, again, that hunger, that appetite, and kind of like, just kind of quieting that creative urge that's always there. And it's weird because I'll get ideas for just about anything at the weirdest times of the day, or when I'm in the middle of doing something else or whatnot. And I'll run to my guitar and work it out. And sometimes working it out can take 2 minutes, 5 minutes, or 5 hours. I don't know, but my OCD kicks in, and I'm down the rabbit hole. And a lot of times I get really, really great results.
So many artists are wired like that too, whether you're a visual artist, a musician, or a dancer. You sort of live in this other realm of your thinking all the time, and people don't realize that, but you're sort of operating here in front, but then there's a side of you that is always percolating and always going, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I listen to music in my head 23 hours a day. Music comes to me in my sleep, in my dreams. It keeps me up at night. A lot of my favorite types of music, I could just feel like I could just turn it on in my head and just sit there and listen to it. And someone will be trying to talk to me, and I'll be just quietly listening to the music in my head, and they'll have to nudge me. I'm like, oh, yeah, sorry, I was listening to my own personal jukebox.
Yes. I want to ask one more question and definitely get to the advice question.
So you alluded to this earlier, but maybe you talk more. The question from the student is, what was the first guitar you ever owned when you traded the album, the $10 for it?
Okay, so there was this department store that isn't around anymore. It was like Crest or Woolworth. It's called Montgomery Ward, and they used to put out a catalog. And the very first guitar I had was out of that catalog. The body was made out of particle board. The pickups were plastic. There were no real switches. They were kind of like these on-off things. And oh man, it barely stayed in tune. The action was so bad, but I could plug it into this really, really bad amp that I had that was literally made out of cardboard. And I got a sound, and that was enough for me. And I got an instructional book with Jimi Hendrix on the cover, and I learned all the fundamentals of starting to play guitar, and I played lead guitar from the very beginning, because that's what I wanted to do. And so I just assumed that, if you just kind of moved your fingers around, that was lead guitar. But after 2 weeks, I thought, this doesn't sound like anything that I'm listening to on the record. So I thought, I had to get a little bit deeper into this. But from the very beginning, I was able to tap out or pluck out little bits and pieces of songs and little bits and pieces of solos and melodies. And I think I was in my first band literally after about 3 weeks of playing my guitar. I went to school one day and I said, you should get a bass, and you should get some drums, and you should sing. And of course, I was the big cheerleader, and they were like, yeah. And so literally 3 days later, we ended up in my friend's garage playing Wild Thing, which is 3 chords or something.
I could tell I was in a college bar 2 weeks ago with a bunch of 15-year-olds doing that exact same thing.
Yep. And it was great fun. We were making a lot of noise, and we were making other people angry. And I thought, oh, we're on to something.
I have to ask this question because I think this is just a curious one. Why do you wear the tape over your knuckles, and what happens if you don't wear the tape?
Well, it's part of my guitar style. I'm really heavy-handed on my right hand. I've always plucked the strings really hard and banged on the guitar very hard when I've strummed or played or whatever. And over the years, there's these little lines there on the side of my hand. And because of the bridge and a lot of its sharp angles and just my style, they would break open and start bleeding. And when one of these lines would break open and start bleeding, if a guitar string got into that cut, it was like the worst paper cut in the world. And so I started taping my hand just to prevent those cuts from happening. I used to wear white tape, but it attracted too much attention, so I switched to transparent tape, but it still attracts a lot of attention. Damn. But sometimes I'll jokingly say, yeah, that's my secret to all my technique.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do want to watch time, and I want to end on the most burning question that everybody always tends to ask, especially with audiences so young as ours today. But do you want to drop any advice for these youngins?
Well, really the best advice I could give any musician is to just practice a lot. Keep your heart open, your mind open, your ears open, and it'll come, really. And just be persistent, be ready to fail a lot. You can learn from your failures. I certainly have. But you can achieve success too. I mean, you will fail a lot. I mean, in a lot of different things, but it's all part of the journey, and you don't really realize that you succeeded, unless you failed a lot and know what that feeling's like. Because the opposite of that is success, and it makes the success part of it obvious. But yeah, practice. I saw a documentary on John Coltrane a few months ago on Netflix, and he was all about that, practicing. He would practice pretty much any minute that he could, and there would be times where they couldn't even find him, and they'd be looking in all these buildings. I mean, all these rooms in the building, or up and down the train car, or whatever, and they'd always find him in a corner, with a flute or a little soprano sax or whatever, just going over scales or just trying to find different progressions, or trying to just grab melodies out of the air, from the environment. And I find that so inspiring. I hate sitting in traffic, and a lot of times when we're on tour, we have long drives, and we have a driver, and so what I'll do is I'll bring my guitar and just play in the car, and it's great because it makes those long drives just go by like that. And when I'm on the plane, I'll bring my computer with me, and work in GarageBand a lot, and so I'll open up GarageBand, start editing or EQing stuff. I mean, it's great if you know how to use that time to practice. It's nothing but beneficial. But yeah, it's all about getting that time. And
Kirk, I want to thank you so much.
Thank you.
For being here. Round of applause, everybody.
cheers.
Again, I just have to thank you tremendously. You've been extremely generous with your time, and it's very much appreciated.
Thanks for having me. It's a real honor to be here in Columbia, your fine city.
And of course, tomorrow night, guys, at the Senate, all ages shows. There's not there's all ages shows in town, but one of this magnitude. So Sunday tomorrow, 8 o'clock, a lot going down. The whole wedding band's incredible. Everybody in that band plays exactly as you're saying. Diverse musicians. You know, I've heard the band. You're really intense. So go out tomorrow, guys. Parents and kids enjoy the show together at the Senate, 8 p.m. It's all ages. It's going to be awesome, and they get to see the WAF.
Yeah, the WAF is going to be something else. And, you know, the wedding band is a pretty good sort of interpretation of how we all kind of think. I mean, we play a lot of different types of music with the wedding band. We're playing rock, funk, punk, metal. I mean, it's a whole mix of stuff. And it's also, we're playing this stuff because it's part of our musical history. And so this is the stuff that we want to play.
I want to tell you, as we just get into a great conversation, like my brain just starts coming up with more questions. But you know what? We'll just have to have you back again.
And I'd be glad to come back.
Kirk Hammett, everybody.
All right, you guys, you have free admission into the museum today. It's all yours. Please take a moment to enjoy the It's Alive exhibition and reflect a little bit on some of the conversation that we had today. And I hope to see some of you guys soon and up on this stage one day. You never know. Thank you all for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.